Hey, so before this long video begins, I just want to say that I recorded this video about 2 months ago, before Season 2, and the reason I never finished it is just I couldn't stand to play or even look at Halo Infinite any longer. I just couldn't do it. I was, and I still am, just completely done with that fucking game. I don't even want to see it. But since I had already put a ton of time into that video, and I mean, it is a thorough video, I figured I'd just suck it up and finish it, and that is what I did. So just keep in mind, I recorded this before Season 2, like 2 months ago, around that. So some things have changed, right? You're gonna hear me talking about some things in this video, and maybe those things have been updated or altered in some type of way, and trust me, I am aware of that. It's just I recorded this video a while ago. That's all that's going on there. But for the most part, my opinions on these maps have not changed. But since I've recorded this video before Season 2, that means that I did not discuss the 2 new maps that we got in Halo Infinite with the Season 2 update, Breaker and Catalyst. So I did add a little section onto the end of this video where I do discuss those maps and some other things that I wanted to mention. So that'll be at the end of the video. But with that out of the way, let's get into this. This is a pretty thorough video, and I'm proud of it, I'd say. I do repeat myself a lot in this video, right? And that's just because I was really trying to get my point across. All right, so there's some things that you're going to hear me say over and over and over again. Just bear with me. Again, I just wanted to be thorough, and yeah. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Now let's get into it. All right, so let's talk about multiplayer maps in Halo. Maps within multiplayer games have always had a huge influence on how much I do or do not enjoy a game. My favorite Halo game is Halo 3, my favorite Call of Duty game is COD 4, and I love a lot of the maps in those games. I also like some of the maps from Modern Warfare 2, I like a lot of maps from Halo 2, but I don't think it's a coincidence that my favorite game from each of those series is also the game with my favorite maps. If you replaced all of Halo 3's maps with Halo 4's maps, I don't think I would have enjoyed Halo 3 nearly as much as I did. If you replaced all of COD 4's maps with Call of Duty Vanguard maps, I also don't think I would have enjoyed COD 4 nearly as much. So if I don't like a lot of the maps within whatever multiplayer game it is I'm playing, there's a good chance I'm not going to find a ton of enjoyment playing that game. And that's kind of where I'm at right now with Halo Infinite. There's a lot of things about Infinite that I dislike, but I gotta say the maps in this game are one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, why I am not finding a ton of enjoyment in this game right now. When I first started playing these maps during the Halo Infinite technical previews, my sentiment was these maps are pretty average, nothing special. But now that the game is out and I've gotten to spend more time on these maps and play a variety of different game modes, yeah, I can honestly say I really don't like the maps in Halo Infinite. And some of the maps I just straight up hate and never want to play ever again. Now, before we get into the issues that I have with these maps in Halo Infinite, I will say this. The older Halo games have some of the best multiplayer maps in all of gaming. Like, those maps set the bar extremely fucking high. And you know, although the maps are great, I do want new experiences. I want new Halo maps that are as good, if not better, than the likes of Midship or Lockout or Guardian, Narrows, The Pit, you know, all the great Halo maps. But you know, if 343 is incapable of making new multiplayer maps as good as the old ones, well, at that point I'd say just remake the old maps then. And don't even tell me that those old Halo maps would not work in Halo Infinite, Because if that is the case, then that's a problem with Halo Infinite. Like, if Halo Infinite truly feels like a Halo game, then it should play just fine on the classic Halo maps. Now, yeah, I understand there's things like grappling hooks and repulsors and thrust and things like that that could change the flow of a map, but those things are pieces of equipment, so you could just not place them on a particular map. You also have sprint, slide, and clamber in Halo Infinite, and that could kind of disrupt the flow on these older Halo maps. But I don't think those abilities should be in the game regardless. Like, I think Halo Infinite would be a better game without sprint, slide, and clamber. Well, at least in the core matchmaking modes. I'm cool with some abilities being in like an action sack playlist or custom games. So again, I want new experiences. I want new, good Halo maps. But if 343 isn't capable of creating new maps that rival the quality of the old maps, then just remake maps. And there are no remade maps in this game. Halo Infinite has launched with 10 maps, 3 BTB maps, and 7 arena maps. And this is the least amount of maps a Halo game has ever launched with, which is really sad considering 343 has had 6 years to develop this game. And although Halo Infinite has a lot of shortcomings, it would have been nice if this game launched with a lot of multiplayer maps. But it launches with the least. Like, oh my, every time I think about that, it blows my mind. The Halo game in development for 6 fucking years launches with the least amount of multiplayer maps. Like, that is unbelievable, inexcusable. But anyways, first I want to talk about the BTB maps in Halo Infinite and why I'm not a huge fan of them. Halo Infinite has 3 big team battle maps: Fragmentation, High Power, and Deadlock. So the first thing about these maps that I'm not a huge fan of pertains to the visuals. I do not like that the aesthetic for all 3 of these BTB maps are very similar, except one of the maps is nighttime. There isn't much variety in the aesthetic from map to map to map. For Big Team Battle, Halo 2 had maps like Coagulation, Waterworks, Burial Mounds, Headlong, Zanzibar. And not only is that more Big Team Battle maps than Halo Infinite has, the aesthetic on each of those maps is very different. And that helps keep things feeling fresh each match you play. Halo 3 only had 3 Big Team Battle maps at launch: Last Resort, Sand Trap, and Valhalla. But again, the aesthetic on each of these maps is very different. But not only did I feel like the classic Halo maps were more unique in terms of visuals, I also felt like the playstyle and flow of those maps were also very unique. In my opinion, the 3 Big Team Battle maps in Halo Infinite all have a pretty similar playstyle. And I feel like that's a result of a few different things. First off, the layout of the map has something to do with it, but it's also how weapons, power-ups, and vehicles are placed on the map and how they're brought into the map. In Halo Infinite Big Team Battle, there are some power-ups and power weapons and vehicles placed on the map from the beginning of the match. But there's also weapon and power-up pods that drop into the map throughout a match. And there's also pelicans that fly into the map and drop off vehicles. And I'll just say right now, I'm not a fan of these new additions at all. I don't like the weapon power-up drop pods, and I'm not a fan of pelicans coming in to drop vehicles off. I prefer the classic way of weapons, power-ups, and vehicles just being placed on the map from the start. And one of the reasons I prefer the old way is because I feel like it helped the maps flow better. Like if you're playing the default map Sand Trap in Halo 3 and you want a sniper rifle, there is only one spot where that sniper rifle spawns. And so anybody that wants the sniper has to go to that spot and fight over it, and there are multiple different ways you can approach it. But in Halo Infinite, I'll be making my way towards a weapon pad where I know a sniper spawns, and then I'll get sniped by somebody across the map because a drop pod came down beside them with a sniper rifle. And I don't like the idea of power-ups and power weapons being given to players for free. Like, just because one player had a drop pod fall beside him with a power weapon, that doesn't mean everyone in the game gets that. I much rather there be static weapon, vehicle, and power-ups placed on the map. That way players have a better understanding of where everything is at, which weapons the enemy team might have, and again, I think it helps with the flow of the map. Another example is Valhalla. You have 2 bases, one on each side of the map, a man cannon that shoots everybody out to the middle of the map, and in the center is a Spartan laser placed on the top of a hill. So because of how the weapons are placed on the map and the design of the map, it almost kind of funnels people into the center of the map to fight for that Spartan laser. But in Halo Infinite, you don't need to do that. That power weapon can just drop down beside you. And I also really dislike the Pelican drops in Halo Infinite Big Team Battle. Because for one, it can kind of disrupt the flow of the match. Like when a Pelican is coming in to drop off a vehicle, sometimes a bunch of players will huddle around under the Pelican and fight over the vehicle when it's dropped. And then other times, people might just completely ignore the Pelican drop because vehicles in this game are made out of paper. So the Pelican drops kind of make for these awkward situations, and it kind of feels underwhelming watching a Pelican fly in just to drop off a ghost that gets destroyed in a couple seconds. And also, I just feel like overall there is a much smaller vehicle presence in these BTB matches in Halo Infinite compared to Big Team Battle in past Halo games. On the map Avalanche in Halo 3, at the very beginning of the match, each team gets 2 Warhogs, a Mongoose, a Wraith, a Hornet, and there's a Ghost that spawns in the middle of the map. The beginning of a game on Valhalla, each base gets 2 Mongooses, a Warhog, a Wraith, and a Banshee. Sandtrap, each side gets 2 Mongooses, 2 Warhogs, a Chopper, and an Elephant. And then there's a Banshee that spawns to the side of the map, which people like to rush at the beginning of the game and fight for control of. And the Elephant on Sandtrap is a map-specific vehicle. We have not seen the Elephant on any other Halo map other than Sandtrap from 2007. The Elephant is a unique vehicle, and having 2 of them placed on the map results in a lot of interesting encounters. Rat's Nest can actually be a pretty fun map in Halo 3, because the map is basically a giant circle with a bunch of vehicles on the map. Each team gets 2 Warhogs and 2 Mongooses at the beginning of the match, and there's a Ghost in the center of the map. And these are the type of encounters that I feel Halo Infinite is desperately lacking. All 3 Big Team Battle maps in Halo Infinite kind of play the same, but there are plenty of BTB maps in the older Halo games that offered unique experiences for that map. Like Rat's Nest, Zanzibar, Sandtrap, Headlong, and Terminal all play considerably different. Or at least they offer more variety than the 3 Halo Infinite BTB maps do. Now, something else I want to discuss regarding the Big Team Battle maps in Halo Infinite is that although Halo Infinite BTB is 12v12, with the maps being as large as they are and the scarcity of vehicles, it almost makes Big Team Battle feel like a smaller experience than that of the older Halo games. Like, yeah, there are 8 extra players in the game if you have a full lobby in Halo Infinite BTB, but the maps are pretty big, so you're a lot more spread out, and like I touched on earlier, with how few power-ups, power weapons, and vehicles are placed on the map, there are less points of interest for players to meet at. Like, just think about how some of the maps in the older Halo games have their own unique and memorable recurring experiences that are kind of specific to a particular map. Like, I'm talking about things such as the race to the sniper rifle or rocket launcher on the map Rat's Nest. A bunch of players and vehicles from each team will all meet at that specific point and fight over that power weapon. You have the mad dash for the Banshee at the beginning of a Sandtrap game, or the confrontation when both teams meet in the center of Avalanche. the sniper battle at the beginning of a Last Resort game, the race to the laser in the middle of Valhalla, or how players on both teams throw themselves at the overshield in the middle of Sandbox. Those are just a few examples of these recurring encounters that take place on these older Halo maps. And I really feel like those kind of map-specific encounters that make a map unique is something that's missing in the Halo Infinite BTB maps. And again, because of how weapons, power-ups, and vehicles are brought into a map during a big team battle match, I feel like that kind of prevents players from meeting at specific locations as often as they did in the past Halo games, where weapons and vehicles were all just placed on the map. They didn't come down in drop pods, and Pelicans didn't fly in and drop vehicles off. In the classic Halo games, players knew where and sometimes when those items were going to spawn on the map, and so teams would meet at specific locations to fight over that weapon or vehicle or power-up. But in Halo Infinite, a power weapon can just fall down beside you in a drop pod while you're in your base, and then you don't need to push out to any specific location to get that sniper rifle because it already fell down beside you. And that can sometimes result in matches feeling somewhat slower and less chaotic than Big Team Battle in previous Halo games. And the size of Halo Infinite's BTB maps contribute to that as well. Like, the map Fragmentation has 2 bases with man cannons on each, kind of like Valhalla, but Valhalla is a much smaller map, so even though it's only 8v8 for Big Team Battle in Halo 3, I feel like that is more of a chaotic and fast-paced experience, more so than playing Big Team Battle on Fragmentation in Halo Infinite, even though that is a 12v12 experience. And I know some Big Team Battle maps in the older Halo games were pretty large, specifically Halo CE, but I'm more so comparing Halo Infinite's Big Team Battle maps to the size of Halo 2 or Halo 3's Big Team Battle maps. Like, I didn't really even enjoy playing on those extremely large Halo CE BTB maps like Infinity, but I think that's mainly due to the fact that Big Team Battle in CE was only 8v8. I do think those maps would be much more enjoyable with more players, and that's a point I want to make. I'm not against Big Team Battle maps being big, but when you have bigger maps, I also feel like you need more players. And I feel like Halo Infinite Big Team Battle would benefit from a larger player count, at least on a map like Fragmentation, that is. And one last thing I want to talk about regarding Big Team Battle in Halo Infinite are the loot caves on the map Fragmentation. Yeah, when it comes to the loot caves, 343, they definitely had an idea, but I just think they're really stupid. And at this point, it seems like many people just ignore the loot cave because they don't feel like sitting there waiting for the door to unlock. Especially because there's not that many power-ups and power weapons inside the loot cave. And there shouldn't be. You don't want a stockpile of a ton of power weapons, no. And with how frequent power-ups and power weapons fall down from the sky in drop pods, many players will just get their weapons and power-ups from that instead of waiting for a door to unlock. And honestly, I think it would be better if those loot caves were just unlocked at all times. Like, you just walk up to the door, it opens, you go in, and there's your weapons. I think that would be much better. Like, I don't really understand how 343 thought loot caves were cool, because in past Halo games, when a player walks up to a power-up or a power weapon, they can just pick it up. So why would 343 think players would enjoy having to wait for a door to unlock to get the power-up or power weapon? Like, that just doesn't make any fucking sense. Now, although I'm not a huge fan of the loot caves on Fragmentation, that doesn't mean I hate them entirely, because I do like the idea of interactive and dynamic elements in multiplayer maps. I just dislike the current implementation of loot caves. But make no mistake, I would absolutely like to see more interactive and dynamic elements on Halo maps. Like, whatever happened to those things, such as the bridge on Zanzibar that you could lower, or the gate you could open, or even the spinning wheel in the center of the map, the train on Terminal, the bases on Standoff, the conveyors on Elongation or Colossus, the stalactites on Waterworks, the door on Turf, the steel beam that moves on the map Headlong, the platform that bounces around on Midship, the flower pots and the elevator on Ivory Tower, the rotating thingy on Ascension, the bunker hatch or the gate on High Ground, the 2 elephants on Sandtrap, these things on Turf, the bridge on Longshore. What happened to this kind of stuff in Halo multiplayer maps? Like, where did all that unique creativity go? I mean, my theory for why multiplayer maps have become less and less creative in several different series is because developers realize that multiplayer maps don't sell games. Back in the day, I feel like developers spent more time creating these maps, and I mean, just watching the Bungie Vidocs back in the day and just hearing the way, you know, they talk about some of these maps and what they were thinking as they were building them, it just really does seem like they put more care and time into it. But now I feel like developers have realized that regardless of how good or bad the maps are, it won't have that big of an impact on the success of the game. I don't know, I could be wrong about that, but that's just my theory. But as I've said, multiplayer maps are a very important aspect of a game for me. How good or bad the maps are is a huge factor in how much I do or do not enjoy the game. Halo Infinite's maps are so fucking bland in comparison to older Halo maps. Infinite's maps are a lot less creative, and I'm already bored of them. And so now the time has come to discuss the arena maps in Halo Infinite. Alright, so just like the BTB maps, the first thing I want to discuss regarding Infinite's arena maps are the visuals. There are a lot of cool things you can do with multiplayer maps within the Halo universe, and I feel like the aesthetic of some of these maps are extremely boring. Like, I think the color palette of the map Livefire just might be the most boring of any Halo map ever. The look of that map just puts me to fucking sleep. The aesthetic of Aquarius is alright, it's different, but I don't hate it. Streets, I like the look of the map Streets, it looks very cool, I just don't like the design of the map. Recharge is pretty boring, Launch Site's pretty boring, Bazaar pretty boring, and Behemoth is the only arena map that uses Forerunner structures. And that's honestly what I want to see more of in Halo Infinite, is more Forerunner themed maps. Halo Infinite might just have the best Forerunner aesthetic out of any of the Halo games. I think I still lean towards Halo 3 being my favorite Forerunner design, but there was some really good looking Forerunner environments within the Halo Infinite campaign. But we don't have any Forerunner themed maps other than the Forerunner structures on Behemoth. But even though Behemoth is Forerunner, it doesn't look like this, or this, or this, and this is what I'm talking about. That's what I want to see, like these really cool Forerunner designs, like we saw in Halo 3 or the Halo Infinite campaign. I mean, there are some sections in the Halo Infinite campaign where I feel like you could just like strip that area out and make it a multiplayer map and it would be decent. And where's all the purple Covenant themed maps, or maybe a Flood themed map? They could even do a Banished themed map. I don't think 343 really took advantage of all the cool things you can do with your multiplayer maps in the Halo universe. But that's enough about visuals. I also really dislike how these maps play. And if I had to pick a singular reason why I dislike these maps, I'd say it's because there is way too much cover on these fucking maps. I feel like these maps would be better if you knocked down like 50% of the fucking walls. I cannot stand it. Like, these maps need to be more open, but there's just so many structures, so many walls that people can hide behind, I feel like too much of Halo Infinite's map geometry blocks sightlines that should be open. And with how many walls and buildings there are on these Infinite maps, it makes it too easy for players to move around the map without having to reveal themselves that much. On the map Recharge, there are routes you can take to move around the outer edge of that map while you're behind walls most of the time and you don't have to reveal yourself to the enemy player that much. I mean, the center of the map is pretty open in front of batteries and bottom mid, but so much of the engagement takes place on the outer edge of the map. And that's an issue I've found on Bazaar as well. The middle of that map is very open as well, but most of the players are just sitting in their buildings on each side of the map. On Livefire, you can take the tunnel bottom mid that is pretty enclosed to move from one side of the map to the other. Maps like Guardian and Narrows from Halo 3, they also had a bottom mid that took you from one side of the map to the other. But think about how many sight lines you have on bottom mid on those maps. It's a lot more open and there's more of a risk to take that route. But on Livefire, bottom mid is very enclosed and it's an all-around safer route. On Streets, there are a ton of buildings, which makes it very easy to move around the map while blocking sightlines. There's also a lot of buildings that block sightlines on Bazaar. Aquarius, I also find to be a really annoying map to play. And, you know, a lot of people like Aquarius. That's like the one map people don't think is too bad in Halo Infinite. I don't like that map. I really don't. And I absolutely hate playing Flag on it. People compare that map to Midship from Halo 2, and that actually inspired some of the callouts on the map, P and Car. And although Aquarius is a much different map than Midship, I understand the comparisons. You got, you know, the base on each side. You can see from one base to the other at the start of the match. It has a top mid, and then you have your Car side and your P side. So, you know, I understand the comparisons to Midship, although it plays a lot different. But unlike Midship, there is so much cover on Aquarius. You can travel from one side of the map to the other behind cover the majority of the time. You don't have to expose yourself. And that's why I hate playing Flag on this fucking map so much. When people pull your flag and they're running it to their base, they're behind walls most of the fucking time. On Midship, you're so fucking exposed. Like, Midship is a open fucking map. Like, you can look out of your base and you can see so much. You can be top Car or top P and you can see the whole fucking map. There's just too many walls on these Halo Infinite maps to hide behind. On Aquarius, you can pull that flag from one base to the other behind fucking walls majority of the time, so you don't expose yourself. On Midship, it's so open, and I can see the fucking flag runner. I can see them. It's open. Knock these fucking walls down, and these maps become better. Holy shit, man. I cannot... God, man. Like I said, these Halo Infinite maps started off where I thought they were just pretty average, but I really fucking dislike them now. God damn, Halo has had some of the best maps in all of gaming. And this is what you give us after 6 fucking years for Halo Infinite? Unbelievable. And recently I have been playing some modded map remakes people created for MCC, and I've been having a blast playing on these remade maps. It's a lot more enjoyable than playing on Halo Infinite maps. So that's why I say if 343 isn't capable of creating new good maps, then just remake the old maps. Because here I am playing these old ass Halo maps, some of them 20 years old, and I'm still having a blast. But I'm already bored of all of Halo Infinite's maps, and some of them I just straight up hate. In Halo Infinite, it is a lot harder to keep distance between yourself and the enemy, because with how these maps are designed and all the cover that's on them, it allows people to move around the map undetected more easily. It's so much easier for players to just run up on you on these Halo Infinite maps. The classic Halo maps were much more open and they had better sightlines. Again, like Midship or Narrows. Think about if you're top mid on Narrows. Think of how much you can see. You can look into the enemy's base, your base, their lift, your lift, their objective, your objective, blue snipe, red snipe. It is so open. The map Sanctuary, other than the very center of the map is pretty open. You're exposed when you're moving around the map. Up top on the map Lockout, it is very open. And Lockout is a map that has a ton of different sight lines, so you can see people moving around the map. Like if a player tries to move from Snipe Tower to top mid to BR Tower, well, you're very exposed. Same thing if a player moves from blue to top mid over to library. There's not much cover at all. And that's how it should be. It should be more of a risk when you're moving around the map. On maps like Aquarius and Bazaar, Recharge, Streets, you can get from one side of the map to the other by simply moving around the outer edge of the map where players don't have a lot of sight lines on you because there is a bunch of walls and buildings in the way. The routes that are available for players to take on these Halo Infinite maps are much more enclosed and safe compared to many of the routes on the classic Halo maps. On Lockout, think about moving from bottom blue to Snipe Tower. You have to take Elbow. Well, think of how open Elbow is. If 343 designed this map, that Elbow would be a tunnel. It would be a completely enclosed fucking tunnel, so you can't see the player moving from one part of the map to the other. Even a map like Construct in Halo 3 is very open. Yeah, you can't see bottom mid from top mid, but you don't usually want to sit bottom mid. You want to control the top of that map where the power positions and power weapons are. And when you're standing on open street or closed street, just think about how much you can fucking see. You can look down below, you can look across at the other street, you can look at open ramp, you can look in lobby through the glass, you can look at the lifts, you can see so much. I feel like if 343 designed that map, they would have put a giant wall on closed street and open street so that you could not see from one side to the other. There would have just been a giant fucking wall there, and the map would just funnel you through hallways, small corridors around the edge of the map. And a map like the Pit, even though there isn't a ton of sight lines from one base to the other, each side of that map is very open. And it's very easy to create distance between yourself and the enemy on these classic Halo maps, like a map like Narrows. If I'm in my base on the map Narrows, the player has to push all the way across top mid to get to me, or all the way across bottom mid, and of course they can also take the man cannon, but they are very exposed doing so. And in the case of the man cannon, it makes a sound when a player takes it, so that alerts players in the game that, hey, somebody's taking the man cannon. Ascension is a very open map with a ton of long-range sight lines. Now, one of Halo's more beloved maps, Beaver Creek, that map's not that open because you have the giant bases on each side that players can hide in, and you also have teleporters in the back of those bases, which makes it really easy for players to go from one side of the map to the other. And that right there kind of sounds similar to the things I dislike about Halo Infinite's maps. And that's because they are. And I've never been a huge fan of Beaver Creek for those reasons. I do think that the two big bases on each side of the map hinders the flow of the match. I don't like how players can teleport from one side of the map to the other using the teleporter in the back of the base where you don't have a lot of sight lines on because it's hidden in the back, and it takes you from one side of the map to the other. So you kind of have to have one guy dedicated to watching that teleporter the whole time, which is just weird. So yeah, Beaver Creek has never been one of my favorite maps. I still think it's better than most, if not all, of Halo Infinite's maps. But the things that I disliked about Beaver Creek apply to a lot of the Halo Infinite maps, except even worse in many cases. Guardian is obviously another open map with tons of sight lines. And when you're sitting at Snipe Tower on that map, which is usually the spot on the map that you want to hold because it's the power position where Snipe and Overshield spawns, But it's kind of hard for enemy players to sneak up on you because you have a lot of these long sight lines, so you can see them coming. Like you can see from top elbow to green, from S2 across top mid to gold, from S1 all the way across bottom mid to bottom gold. You have a good sight line on blue window and the man cannon. And if a player makes it to the lift and they use it, well, it makes a sound, so that's another way you know they're coming. But on a map like Bazaar, if I spawn in my base and I look out towards mid, there's a bunch of buildings in my way. I'm just looking at a bunch of buildings, and I don't know if a player is going to come through alley or commando, double doors, palm. You don't really have any long sight lines there. And so because of all that map geometry blocking sight lines, it makes it way too easy for players to just fly into your base. I'm serious when I say I think knocking down these buildings would make this map better. Honestly, those buildings on each side of the map, delete them and just put one set of buildings in the middle of the map, splitting the map in two like the pit. I think that would play a lot better. On the map Live Fire, if a player is sitting top tower, for one, the sight lines aren't very good because there's walls in the way. And also, it's pretty easy for players to sneak up on you because of that tunnel bottom mid that runs from one side of the map to the other. A player can take that tunnel, move out through canal, and go up back tower. And when you're top tower, you can't really watch that route unless you turn around and just stare bottom canal. But you shouldn't have to do that. There shouldn't be these secret routes players can take to sneak up on you and close the distance that easily. But if a player is standing top tower on the pit, they have a lot of long, open sight lines. And that's how it should be. There's no secret underground tunnel a player can take that leads them back tower so they can sneak up behind you. The closest thing you have to that on the map, the pit, is runway, but the player top tower has a much better view of a player pushing out a runway than they do of canal when they're standing top tower on Live Fire. And now if we take a look at the other side of the map Live Fire, over where the A stronghold resides, think about how bad the sight lines are there. If you're inside there capping A stronghold or holding the oddball, you don't have many good sight lines. You can't see bottom mid, you can only see part of top mid, you can't see over by B or by nest, you don't have a good sight line on camo. There's just so much shit in the way obstructing your view. To obtain a better sight line, you actually have to push out a little bit, out of these doors and out of garage to get a better view of the map. But the problem with that is, when you push forward to get that better sight line of the map, it makes it much easier for players to sneak up on you and catch you off guard. Like for example, if you push out of A towards sandbags so you can obtain a better view of the map, well now players can easily run in through garage or bottom mid or scoreboard or window and get behind you. With how these maps are designed, there seems to be a lot of sneaking up on players and catching them off guard. Much more than playing on the classic Halo maps. In the older Halo games, it really seemed like a player's success was more dependent on how good their shot was and the plays that they made. But in Halo Infinite, I see players finding success more often by catching players off guard. And not because they were making some big brain play, no, because of how these dogshit maps are designed. Again, a map like Streets has a lot of safe routes players can take because there's so many buildings in the way and it's very easy to block sightlines. Streets has some of the worst fucking sightlines I've ever seen. Like when my teammates call out enemy players, I try to look and help them, but there's just so many fucking buildings in the way. And what's up with all the sightlines on that map where you're looking through foliage, grass, and trees? I mean, I'm okay with some sight lines on maps where a tree might obstruct your view a little bit, but on some of these Halo Infinite maps, it's fucking ridiculous. And it's especially ridiculous because on PC in this game, players don't get red reticle, which means when they place their reticle on an enemy player, it doesn't turn red. But if you're playing Halo Infinite On console, your reticle does turn red if it's over a player and you're close enough. So in a way, console players do kind of have an advantage here. Like if a PC player and a console player get into a battle and there's leaves or grass or some kind of a plant in the way obstructing the view, the console player's reticle will turn red through that foliage. So it's much easier for them to determine whether or not their reticle is on the player they're shooting at. But the PC player, their reticle doesn't turn red. So they have to guess a little bit more whether or not their reticle is placed properly. Halo Infinite is the first Halo game that I've played without red reticle, and I find that I am shooting through foliage more than any other Halo game. Like, what the fuck is up with that? Like, you're gonna make these maps and obstruct sight lines with trees and grass and plants, and then take away red reticle from PC players, because apparently that was supposed to help prevent cheating, but this game is infested with cheaters, so at that point, just give me my fucking red reticle back. The map Recharge also has a ton of terrible sight lines. Like if I'm top gold or yellow on Recharge, and I look out towards mid, well, there's not a ton of good sight lines there. I don't have a good sight line on bottom mid where camo spawns. I can't see that well into top elevator or in control or C. I don't have a good sight line on long. And because of all the walls blocking sight lines and the routes that are available on that map, makes it so easy for players to sneak up on you if you're top yellow. Players can run through red pipes to get behind you, or they can go from long to bottom yellow to get behind you. Or a player can move from long to top glass and close the gap on you that way. And it's the same type of thing if I'm sitting top elevator on that map, whether I'm capping or defending a stronghold or holding the oddball or whatever it may be. If I look out towards mid from top elevator, I don't have a great sight line into control. Can't really see C. I can't see inside of yellow or red pipes. Can't see long. I mean, the middle of the map is open, and I can see the middle of the map, but many people don't push through the middle of the map because you have these routes you can take around the outer edge of the fucking map, and those are much safer routes than running out in the open through mid. And of course, just like with many positions on these Halo Infinite maps, it is very easy for a player to sneak up on the player sitting top elevator, because there is a route they can take to go bottom elevator and jump up top elevator. And that makes it incredibly easy to catch players off guard. And when I was playing Halo Infinite, I caught so many players off guard taking that exact route. And again, I don't like the idea of players finding success and getting kills because they're catching players off guard all the time. I'm not saying that you never catch players off guard in the older Halo games, no, but it seems a lot more frequent in Halo Infinite, and with the way these maps are designed, it's no secret why. And you know, I think all this might tie in to why people dislike certain weapons in this game. I think because of the way these maps are laid out, and the routes that are available and how much cover there is on these maps, and how easy it is to move around the map without having to reveal yourself that much, and also how easy it is to sneak up on players, I think this all plays a part in why some people dislike or hate the Mangler, or the energy sword on Recharge in the competitive settings. One of people's biggest criticisms pertaining to the Mangler is that one-shot beatdown, which almost feels just like a one-hit beatdown because you can do it so fast. It just feels like you're getting one-hit beatdown. And that is happening to players a lot on these maps because of how easy it is to close the gap. Same thing goes for the energy sword on the map Recharge, which spawns back fucking C. It is so easy to acquire the energy sword without exposing yourself, because it's fucking hidden in the back of the map. A fucking power weapon like the energy sword should not be placed in the fucking back of the map like that, where players don't have a lot of sight lines on it in the competitive settings for Halo. That's not right. And I definitely think the weapons and the placement of those weapons on these maps is a contributing factor to why I dislike these maps so much. Like Heretic in Halo 3, there was an energy sword on that map, but it wasn't a big deal at all because that map is so open and the energy sword spawns top mid. So if you try to get the energy sword, you're very exposed going for it because there's so many angles you can get shot from. On the map Recharge, it is very easy to acquire the energy sword without having to worry about getting shot at. Same goes for the Mangler. And then it's also very easy to close the gap on enemy players and get that sword kill or get that one-shot beatdown with the Mangler. But the energy sword on the map Heretic, it's a lot harder to acquire, and then it's also harder to close the gap on enemy players to use it, because that map is so open and you're exposed when you're moving around the map. And you also can't sprint or super slide in classic Halo, and I do think those abilities exacerbate this problem of it being too easy to close the gap and move around the maps undetected in Halo Infinite. But because Halo Infinite does have sprint and slide, and you can super slide to go even further, and because maps are not upscaled to accommodate for sprint, the combination of these things hurts the way the map plays, and in some cases it makes power weapons a little too effective. Like on the map Streets, there is a shotgun that spawns over by Purple Street, and with how many buildings are on that map, it makes it very easy for a shotgun player to run around the map and get easy shotgun kills, or sprint slide out around corners and get the shotgun kill, or just camp in a corner and wait for somebody to walk by. A rocket launcher also spawns on the map Streets in the competitive settings for Halo Infinite. And I'm mostly just talking about weapon spawns in competitive because that's pretty much all I play when I do play Halo Infinite, which isn't often. If you acquire the rocket launcher on Streets, then that's basically free kills. Because again, like I've been saying, there is so much cover on that map and it's very easy to move around that map without exposing yourself too much. So it's very easy to get close to an enemy player and get that easy rocket kill, or you just sit in a corner and wait for somebody to walk by. But then let's compare that to a map like Narrows, which also has a rocket launcher on it in Halo 3. When you have the rocket launcher on Narrows, that's not necessarily easy kills. No. Like if a team has control of top mid and you're stuck in your base with a rocket launcher, well, you're fighting uphill. That's not an easy rocket kill. No, you actually have to play smart or slow and methodically to get that rocket kill in many cases. Of course, if you're playing a team that's not very good and they just run at you, then, you get kills that way. But if you're playing like a competent team, those rocket kills don't always come easy on a map like Narrows. But on a map like Streets and Halo Infinite, that shit just comes fucking easy. It's free. Same thing on the map Bazaar. You get the rocket launcher on that map, you just fucking sit in their palm or over in their commando, and you just wait. You just wait. Easy rocket kills. Free in the competitive settings in Halo Infinite. And I think I could do a whole separate video about why I'm not a big fan of the competitive settings in Halo Infinite. I just feel like there are too many ways to just get easy-ass kills. And speaking of the map Bazaar, yeah, I absolutely fucking hate that map. I fucking hate it. I actually rather play Behemoth than fucking Bazaar. And let me just touch on Behemoth real quick. I know some people dislike the map, some people love it. When I played Behemoth in the flights, I was a big fan of the map. I thought it was a lot of fun. And I still think it is for casual settings with vehicles on the map. I think that's how that map plays best. But playing fucking 5 flag on that in competitive was awful. I still rather play that than fucking Bazaar. But I did not like Behemoth, especially 5 flag, for competitive settings in Halo Infinite. The amount of times I would spawn out in the open and get shot at immediately and die was ridiculous, and there was just nothing I could do because I'm out in the middle of the sand and there was no cover. And I think that was probably more an issue with the spawns on that map rather than the map itself. However, I do enjoy Behemoth with casual settings, 4v4 with vehicles on the map. It's still not my favorite map of all time, but I do think it's more fun to play Behemoth with those settings than in competitive. But my god, Bazaar, oh my god, get this map, delete it. Can I delete the file? Get this fucking map out of the game. Bazaar is so god-awful. I don't know how anyone at 343 thought this map was anything but complete ass. The flow of the map is ass. There's too many buildings in the way. Knock down those fucking walls and the map will instantly become better. And I especially hate playing this map in Flag. You know how earlier when I talked about the pit in Halo 3 and how I said that map is kind of split up into 2 different sections and each side of the map is very open? Well, Bazaar is kind of split up into fucking 3, and I think it plays terribly. Like, you could be standing in the middle of the map, but you can't see into the enemy's base because there's a bunch of buildings in the way. You also can't see to your base because there's a bunch of buildings in the way. So there's times where you could just be in the middle of the map and like you can't help your teammates or put shots because you can't see into your base or the enemy's base. Same thing goes if there's players in the middle of the map. If you spawn in your base, you have to run out of your base through double doors, through alley, or through the buildings to be able to see into mid. These maps, especially Bazaar, desperately need better sightlines. Now, throughout this video, I understand that it may have seemed like I was discussing these maps from more of a competitive perspective, which I did to an extent. But whether or not I feel like a map is good is not entirely based off of whether or not it works well in competitive play. A lot of the great classic Halo maps that I referred to throughout this video were maps that worked well in competitive. But I feel like a lot of those maps also worked well in casual, social play. And even some of the maps that players deemed not so great in the classic Halo games, I still admired for their creativity and the unique things that you could do on those maps. And this ties into another thing I dislike about Halo Infinite's maps. I don't think they offer enough variety. And I'm not talking about visual variety, I'm talking about variety within the gameplay. When it comes to the maps in the older Halo games, I feel like there was more diversity within the gameplay. And I'm talking about things such as the beginning of a match on Citadel, where a player from each team will push their overshield, grenade jump themselves top mid, and fight for the rocket launcher. Or how on Ghost Town, one team will take a mongoose to the overshield, while the other team tries to stop them by throwing grenades and brute-shotting them. Or pushing a power core up the lift on Construct, and sending a nade up there with it, in hopes that you kill somebody sitting at the top of the lift. At the beginning of a match on High Ground, driving the mongoose to camo or rockets. Orbital, one player drives a mongoose while the other stands on top, and you launch yourself up to rockets. A good strategy on the map Sandbox is having one player take the chopper out to the sand dunes and rain fire down on the enemy base. At the beginning of a Guardian match, it's common for a team to send one player over the lift with a brute shot to fight for camo. Isolation, I love taking the mongoose to rockets at the start of the match. On Blackout, if you spawn library, you can shoot the fusion coil by snipe to launch the snipe over to BR tower. The beginning of an Epitaph game, you grab the bubble and try to make the rocket guy blow himself up. That is the type of variety I'm talking about on these older Halo maps, and it's something Infinite's maps are desperately missing. When I play Halo Infinite, I feel like my opening strat on every map is, it's very similar. It's, okay, on this map, I'm gonna run here. This one, I'm gonna run here. On live fire, I'm gonna run there. On streets, I'm gonna run here. There's no, I'm gonna go grab the power drain and take the man cannon and drain top mid. There's no, I'm grabbing overshield and I'm gonna nade myself top mid for rockets. Or hey, drive this mongoose and launch me up the rockets on orbital. Where is all that stuff in Infinite? It's non-existent. And I know all the maps I just named there are Halo 3 maps, but that's part of the reason why Halo 3's maps are my favorite. And also, I forgot to mention buddy jumping in the classic Halo games. There were times in a match where you would Have your friend buddy jump you up so you could reach a higher location? Or maybe you would buddy jump just to gain a better angle? You can't do anything like that in Halo Infinite since there's no teammate player collision. And another thing Halo Infinite's maps are really missing, and I don't think any map does this besides Behemoth, is power up and power weapon spawns on each side of the map, meaning each team gets a power weapon or a power up or both. Like Snowbound in Halo 3, each team gets an overshield and a beam rifle. The Pit, each team gets a shotgun and a sniper rifle. And then you have overshield, sword, camo, and rocket launchers in the middle of the map. Valhalla, each team gets a sniper and vehicles. Citadel, there's an overshield and a sniper on both sides of the map. Standoff, each team gets a shotgun, rocket launcher, camo, warhog, and there's a Spartan laser that spawns in the middle of the map. Foundry, each team gets a sniper. Narrows, each team gets a sniper. Sanctuary, each team gets a sniper. Cold Storage has a overshield, camo, sniper, rocket launcher, and shotgun on it. Ascension, both teams get a snipe. Beaver Creek, both teams get a snipe with a rocket launcher and a power-up in the middle. Zanzibar gets 2 snipes. Same thing with Prisoner, along with a camo, an overshield, a rocket launcher. Where the hell is all that in Halo Infinite? Like I said, I think Behemoth is the only map that does that, where a sniper rifle spawns in each base. But other than that, all the other Infinite Arena maps pretty much just have neutral power-up and power weapon spawns, like one of each in the center of the map. Many of the classic Halo maps were filled with power-ups, power weapons, vehicles, or equipment, and that's another reason why I feel Halo Infinite's maps are so goddamn boring. I mean, I've barely even gotten to use the sniper in Halo Infinite, because when I did play, I mostly just played ranked. And in that playlist, the only map with a sniper rifle on it is Live Fire, and there's only one of them, and that's like a terrible fucking map to snipe on. I'd rather just have the fucking Mangler. So that concludes the part of the video, the majority of the video, that I recorded like 2 months ago before Season 2 had happened. I am now recording this on June 17th. And there's a few more things I want to discuss real quick, including the 2 new maps that we got with Season 2, Breaker and Catalyst. But first I want to say this, a lot of people... So regarding the maps in Halo Infinite, I've heard some people criticize these maps for being 3 lanes, right? 3-lane maps. And you definitely have some of that in Halo Infinite with like Live Fire and Streets. And, you know, I guess there's some other maps you could argue are kind of like 3 lanes or whatever. But I just want to say this, like, just because a map is 3 lanes does not mean it is inherently bad, right? Like, some of my favorite maps from like COD 4 are 3-lane maps or 4-lane maps. Like, just because something is 3 lanes doesn't mean it's bad. But there is no denying that in terms of map design, Halo Infinite's maps are definitely lacking variety. And the Halo Infinite maps don't even come close to living up to the god tier maps of past Halo games, right? Like I've said, Halo has had some of the best maps in all of gaming. So it is an absolute disgrace we got what we got in terms of maps for Halo Infinite. Well, not even in terms of maps. It's an absolute disgrace what we got with Halo Infinite in general. So as I mentioned throughout this video, I believe a lot of the older Halo maps are far better than the Infinite maps for many reasons, right? But since I've recorded this video, yeah, there is something else I thought about that I didn't necessarily mention in this video. And that is about how you moved around the older Halo maps. Like, I just feel like, in a way, the older Halo maps felt kind of bigger and more majestic in a way. And I think some of that has to do with how you move around the map. Right? Like, I'm thinking of things like Narrows, right? Like jumping off of like top mid area over to the lift or over to the objective, or taking the man cannon and shooting yourself across the map, or taking the man cannon on Valhalla, shoot you out to the middle of the map, jumping off the leap of faith on Ascension all the way down to Rockets, and then you could take the lift, which shoots you way back up on top of the map. Construct, jumping across like this big gap from street over to snipe spawn, or jumping from street all the way down to bottom mid, right? You can move around the map in these bigger ways, or the lift on Colossus in Halo 2 shoot you up in the air. I just feel like on Halo Infinite maps, a lot of how you move around those maps is just running to different spots and utilizing the movement tech like sliding and clambering. But yeah, a lot of it's just running or sliding here, or running there, running over here, running and clambering up there. You don't move around the maps in the same type of way that you could in a lot of these older Halo maps. And I could provide more examples of this, but this video is already long enough as is, and I've already named a few, and I think you guys get the point. Halo Infinite's maps are just so goddamn bland, boring, and lack variety. And when I was playing Halo Infinite, there was never a map that I was eager to play on, right? Like when I was searching for games, there was never a time where I was like, oh, I hope we get this map. Oh, I hope we get this one. No, it was more of just, oh, I hope we don't get that one. Please don't get this one. Right? There was no map that I wanted to play. And I do want to make it clear that I have completely stopped playing Halo Infinite at this point. It is uninstalled. The last time I played the game was like the second day of Season 2, and I didn't really even want to play the game. I just tried it out because it was the new season and I wanted to discuss it, so that's why I hopped on and played a few games of like Last Spartan Standing. But yeah, I haven't been playing the game at all, and even before Season 2, even before that, I wasn't really playing the game at all. So yeah, pretty much just done with the game right now. Don't even want to think about it or look at it. But when I did last play the game, I did briefly get to try out the 2 new maps that got added to Halo Infinite with Season 2. A big team battle map called Breaker and a arena map called Catalyst. And let's start with Catalyst here. I did predict, and I think many people predicted that the next arena map we were going to get in this game would have a Forerunner design. That's what I thought it was going to be, and turns out that is the case. Catalyst is a Forerunner themed map, and I think it's the best looking map in Halo Infinite. I think that's safe to say. I think many people would agree with that. Now, in terms of how the map plays, can't really give an opinion on it. I played the map like twice, played it like twice, and then dropped the game altogether. So, yeah, can't say too much on how it fucking plays. Haven't even watched much gameplay on it, but it seems like a lot of people aren't really that big of a fan of that map. So, yeah, but I mean, yeah, I can't give any opinions on how it plays because I just played it like fucking twice. And when I was playing, and those 2 times I played it, I couldn't even focus on the map. I was actually just focusing on how my BR wouldn't shoot because of the gun jamming glitch. So that's all I was focused on when I did play it. But yeah, I definitely think it is the best looking map in Halo Infinite right now. And when it comes to Breaker, the big team battle map, I never played it in big team battle. I only played it in Last Spartan Standing. And I'll say this, visually, it's different than the other big team battle maps, which were all very samey. But the aesthetic is still not great. It's just what, like dirt and debris? And that's it? I mean, it's not too great to look at. So, yeah, nothing special there in terms of visuals. And what I found that I didn't like when I played this map was I felt like there were a lot of, bad sight lines, kind of like many of the maps in Halo Infinite. Like, it just felt like the map was kind of sectioned off. Like there was different sections that you didn't have line of sight on because it was surrounded by like debris or walls or stuff like that. I mean, there were times when I was playing Last Spartan Standing and I was in the middle of the map and I was just I could oversee like a lot of the map, but I wasn't seeing anybody because they were fighting within behind walls, behind debris, didn't have line of sight on them. So that's what I will say. It kind of felt like the map was kind of sectioned off, and I didn't think it flowed well, but I didn't play it in BTB. So yeah, those are my opinions on the 2 new maps. That's it. Doesn't really change much at all for me in terms of what I think of Halo Infinite's maps. Now, as some of you have heard me say many times before, multiplayer maps in a video game have a big influence on whether or not I enjoy the game, right? And I don't hate, but I dislike a lot of Halo Infinite's maps. Some of them I do hate. And yeah, I don't enjoy the game. But here's the thing, like going forward, you know, I'm sure we're going to get new maps, but it's just, what is it going to just be like 1 map or 2 maps at a time? Like I'm at the point right now. Well, when I was playing Halo Infinite, I was at the point where like I needed 10 new good maps right now, right? Like that's what I needed. But obviously that was unrealistic. Obviously we're not getting that. So the fact that Halo Infinite launched with the maps that it did, I mean, it's kind of already chalked right there. Like the damage is done, right? Like now we're going to have to wait, you know, months, years to get more good maps into the game. And I'm not really a huge fan of how live service games roll out new maps where it's like, you know, 1 or sometimes 2 maps at a time. I prefer map packs. I fucking love map packs in video games. Like, I love that shit. Back in COD 4, back in the older Halo games, I loved map packs. And with those map packs, you would get usually you would get a map pack playlist. So you could search that playlist and just play on the new maps. I was a sucker for those map pack playlists. I love that shit. But we don't really get that anymore with when you're rolling out 1 or 2 maps at a time. And I mean, in Halo Infinite's case with Season 2, the 2 maps that we got were a big team battle map and 1 arena map. So because they did it like that, you can't really have a playlist because for 1, it's only 2 maps. So I guess you could technically, but one of them's a big team battle map. So if the playlist is 4v4, playing 4v4 on the big team battle map would be weird. And if the playlist was, 12v12, which is what big team battle is in Halo Infinite, well, playing 12v12 on Catalyst would be weird. So you can't really do it. But in the older Halo games, we would usually get 3 maps in a map pack. So you could have a playlist for those 3 new maps. And a lot of the big team battle maps in the older Halo games, you could also play 4v4 on, or 5v5, whatever it was. So yeah, I definitely prefer map packs more than I do, getting 1 map or 2 maps at a time and not having a playlist specific for those maps. And with that, I think we're going to end it there. Those are my opinions on not only Halo Infinite's maps, but the maps of the older Halo games. I don't know what to say. Like, I'm recording this like after I've already just completely given up on the fucking game, right? It's just out of sight, out of mind right now. So I just don't even want to think about it. But yeah, I can't really say the maps are the reason I'm not playing the game right now. That game, Halo Infinite, is a terrible Halo game for many reasons, but despite all of its faults, it would have at least been nice if the game had launched with more maps and maps that were actually, fucking good. But instead, the game launched with a bunch of maps that are shit, and it's the least amount of maps a Halo game has ever launched with. Like, okay, whatever. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And let me know what you thought of my opinions on these maps. If you agree, if you disagree, let me know. I'll be reading the comments, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace out, everybody.